if you were talking about a different type of corruption. Okay. I yield, oh, no, I don't yield yet because I have to do this protocol right. I see my colleague from New Hampshire is on the floor, and I would welcome a question if you have one.
Will the senator yield for a question?
Yes, I will yield.
I'm normally your seatmate, but I thought it might be easier if we talked this way. So I am down here in a different place than I usually am to ask a question. But I want you to know how much I and all of your colleagues appreciate your standing up for democracy. Because we are in a pivotal moment, as you've said, not just in this country, but globally. And I know that you care about not just what's happening domestically in the United States, but you also care about what's happening in the world, because you and I serve on the Foreign Relations Committee together. And I just came from a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who shared that Europeans are now spending more on defense than the United States for the first time since President Eisenhower. And they are working together to strengthen sanctions against Putin and his bloodthirsty gangs who are wreaking havoc on Ukraine and Europe. And I have some good news that I wanted to share with you from the Foreign Relations Committee this morning, since you weren't able to be with us. And it applies to what's happening in Ukraine and Europe. Because this morning, in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the committee considered 3 bipartisan bills to address Russia's continued expanding aggression for the first time in this Congress. So the first time since the beginning of the year, we have actually taken action in the Foreign Relations Committee, action that you supported with your proxy votes, and I appreciate that, to take action against Russia's aggression in Ukraine. One bill will designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism because of what they've done to kidnap Ukrainian children. One will stop Chinese entities from supporting Russia's brutal war machine against Ukraine. And the final one will authorize a continued quarterly transfer of Russia's foreign assets that have been seized in the United States to support Ukraine. So I think all of these bills passed. They were bipartisan. They passed unanimously out of the committee. And I think it's a critical time in history for this Congress to be taking a stand on Ukraine. So, Senator Merkley, given this important moment in history, what more can we do in the Senate to support our allies and to protect the Ukrainians from further bloodshed from Vladimir Putin?
I so much appreciate the good report and question from my colleague from New Hampshire, and appreciate her leadership on the Foreign Relations Committee as the top Democrat, working hard to partner across the aisle for the common cause of international security. And every time I think about Ukraine, I think about how fiercely, including the Orange Revolution, in which they did so much to say, no, we will not be taken over by Russia. We will not be put under the thumb of Russia by one of our presidents. They have said, we see the system to our north where there is no freedom, where people are not in charge of their own destiny because they are ruled by a dictator, and we reject that and will fight with our lives. And so many have, in fact, perished on the battlefield to defend our freedom. That inspires me every time I think about it. And at the moments in which President Trump has been less supportive of Ukraine and more supportive of Russia, I have tried to send him magical vibes. No, understand the difference between standing with a nation fighting for freedom and snuggling up with a dictator. We are a light to the world when we fight for democracy and support democracy. So I'm really pleased to hear about these 3 bills passing. And I hope that other factors can be worked out in the international community that will help slow down the Russian war machine. They are an incredibly large country, and they have built huge factories to produce cruise missiles. And so nightly, Ukraine is hammered with hundreds now. And so it just means more resolve by the United States, more resolve by Europe. I am surprised to hear that the Europeans collectively are spending more on defense than the U.S. I am like, if that had been a trivia question, I would have failed. But there it is. And that certainly has been partly to recognize the threat from Russia. If Russia is willing to slice off a piece of Georgia, as they were in 2008, I believe, if they're willing to throw thousands of soldiers into a fight in Ukraine, really with no consideration, I mean, it's just like fodder to the war machine. And then we're seeing that they're overflying some of the other European countries. And these are incredibly provocative. So I think all of that goes towards hopefully forging a unity of purpose between Europe and the United States. Something you may not know, one of the skeletons in my closet is I spent a rotation working at NATO in Brussels when we were trying to develop a treaty for intermediate range missiles because of the nuclear threat, to stabilize the threat. It's the middle of the 1980s. And the United States and Europe worked so closely together. That is the type of partnership. It's the type of partnership that has taken some hits in the last few years. We want to restore that vision of that careful, detailed, determined coordination so that we advance the best strategies. And of course, battlefield strategies are also changing dramatically as we go, being able to adjust to this changing world. So that's my hope, that building on the work that the committee did today, and hopefully those bills will be here on the floor, hopefully they'll be on the President's desk, that we can continue to strive to a peaceful conclusion with security for Ukraine and not allow the war machine of Russia to overwhelm it.